Hello, my Micto brothers, back again in for another program, and this time we're going to extend last week's topic. In this particular episode, we're going to be talking more deeply about the Anima, that Nawalt, that female that dwells inside of men. We're going to talk more deeply about what it is and how it fits into our psyche and into the process that Jung called individuation, getting in touch with your inner self. As we learned from the last episode, that a man's anima is that small minority of female that exists inside of the man. And that female nature that exists inside a man, although it's small, does operate as a female and has all the characteristics of female nature. So that bonding, nurturing, soft side that men can sometimes express, this is where those feelings and aspects actually lie. For men who have children, when you nurture your children, when you nurture children, that is coming from the aspect of your anima projecting itself. Now, if we go back to an earlier video, in fact, the first video that was in this Esoteric MGTOW series, we talked about female nature. And if you remember what we said about female nature, this applies to the anima. What is the duty and the first loyalty of female nature? It's loyalty to its nest and to its offspring. So where does your anima make her nest? Her nest is in your inner psyche. It's in your inner self. And the offspring that she gives birth to are the things that are inside that inner self. Your anima's job is to give birth to those thoughts, feelings, and ideas inside the nest or inside your inner psyche. This is something that we're going to touch on when we start dealing with individuation and the schema that the process follows. But to continue on, since we have designated or determined that the anima is a female or female nature operating inside of a male space, what does the anima require? What is it looking for? What is the female's first job? It's looking for the best material it can find, not only for its nest, but the best material it can find for its offspring to thrive and survive in any given environment. But the thing is, just like in female nature, it doesn't come with its own space and doesn't come with its own material. It depends on the masculine to supply it with the material and space that it needs. It depends on the masculine to mold and shape it and shape the nest that it needs. And the offspring that it produces is directly related to the material that the masculine supplies it with. Think of the masculine as the programmer and the anima as the computer. Remember the old saying, garbage in, garbage out? If you don't supply the anima with a safe space and good material or good thoughts and ideas and education, whatever, to produce with, it cannot produce good offspring. So if you give the anima unhealthy emotions, its nest won't be viable. It'll have a lousy nest. If you feed the anima unhealthy and unproductive thoughts, then the actions and offspring that it produces are going to be bad and unhealthy and negative. A man's anima is his own personal vessel. It is his masculine that shapes it and feeds it and protects it so that it can nurture and reproduce the actions and thoughts that make his creation viable. It is your It is a man's own personal vessel. And if he doesn't shape it, and he doesn't feed it, and he doesn't nurture it, something else will. If a man allows his anima to be shaped and controlled by an outside force, whether it be society, whether it be family, whether it be a woman, then he will never have complete control of his psyche or his life. Just like a woman, just like a female, she will do the bidding of the force that feeds her, that protects her, that nurtures her, that provides for her. A man's anima is in charge of nurturing a man's emotional state. So if a man doesn't develop a mature anima, his emotional state will always be unbalanced, always be immature, always be underdeveloped, because it doesn't have that female nature to nurture and develop them. Remember, the females are in charge of what? Emotion. Men are in charge of logic. A lot of men do what we've been taught to do, is to give over that emotional agenda over to a woman of our choosing, something outside of us. We choose that woman to carry our anima, and she's supposed to be emotional for us. She's supposed to feel for us. She's supposed to be emotionally in touch with the world for us. And through her, a lot of men interact with their environment emotionally. So if we lose that woman, what happens? We are still underdeveloped emotionally. We go through a hard time. Instead of doing the work ourselves and developing that nawal, that perfect woman that we have living inside of us. So, like I said earlier in the video, emotions are what the anima uses to build the nest. So if you give it positive emotions, positive emotional material, it'll build a positive nest. So when we do the inner work, like building confidence and building emotion, positive emotions, and doing that emotional work, what we're actually doing is giving the anima, or the female side inside of us, room to build that nest for the offspring, or the ideas and emotions that she wants to produce. So when you go lift weights, when you're healthier, you eat better, you dress better, you do positive things with positive hobbies and things like that, you're feeding confidence and positive emotions, so that that anima inside you can actually build with it. And when you can do that, don't you notice that your emotional state gets better? Why? Because you're feeding positive and good material, so that that vessel can contain them, and that vessel can produce the results that you want on the other side. When you do those things, you're developing your vessel, you're developing that anima to make it stronger. The second part of female nature is developing the offspring. You're getting material to develop the offspring. What are the offspring that your anima produces? Your anima produces what comes out of your inner psyche, thoughts, feelings, and actions. And just like sperm is used as material, or genetic material, to produce offspring, what do you think produces the offspring for the anima? Is ideas and information. So for the anima to produce positive thoughts, feelings, and actions, you have to feed it positive information and positive ideas. Reading books, listening to lectures, learning something positive that you didn't think you could do. All those things feed your anima the material that it needs to give you the thoughts, feelings, and actions that you want. If you go to the Dark Knight's channel and listen to his series on transcendence, this is exactly what he's talking about. He's not saying it in the same way, but that's what he's talking about. If he goes through step by step how you feed and provide for your anima and how you develop her. If you don't develop that woman inside of you, Just like the woman on the outside, she's going to go sleep with somebody else, and she's going to produce offspring for that outside force. So when you work for somebody else, or you live for somebody else and not yourself, that means somebody else has control of her, control of that woman. Like I said, if you don't shape her, somebody else will. Now, in this section, we're going to briefly touch on the theory and the process of individuation. Even though it's a deep and complex subject on its own, and it has, like I said, tons of books on the process of Jungian psychology, the reason we're going to introduce it here is because without it, we can't understand the position and the nature of the anima that's inside of us. Here we have a very good but simplified diagram of Jung's, what he calls the personal unconscious, or should I say personal psyche. Now, Jung also has developed what he calls a map of the collective unconscious, which is what he calls the universal mind, but that is outside the scope of this particular discussion. So for this, we're going to concentrate on the personal psyche. In this diagram, it shows the psyche like an onion. Now, this particular onion has 5 layers in 2 parts. The first 2 parts are the seen or the conscious parts, which are the persona and the ego. The second part is the bigger part, which is the unconscious part, or the unseen, and that contains the shadow, the anima or animus, depending on whether you're male or female, and then the center, which is the self, the unconscious self. Now, Jung describes these 5 parts as archetypes, and the archetypes are energetic patterns of action. Now, these 5 archetypes act as doors to the self, and to go through the process of individuation, which is getting in contact with the 5 parts to integrate them, you have to take them in order, starting with the outer layer, just like slicing through an onion, and going layer by layer into the center. So we're going to start with the outside layer, or the outside part, which is the pieces that we are conscious of. Now, starting with the outermost layer, which is the persona, which is the easiest to get in contact with, because it's something that we deal with every day. That is how we interface with the rest of the world. We're constantly going through the persona, or the personality, as we said in an earlier video. It is our socialized mask, or our socialized interface, that allows us to get along with other human beings or other entities. It is the sum total of the other 4 parts that are inside of us. The next archetype is what Freud and Jung called the ego. It is the I. It is our self-identification from the inside. It is the observer looking out on the world through our eyes. It is the conscious part that controls the persona. It is the center of our quote-unquote consciousness. It is the gateway for the unconscious part to come through into the world. It determines how we act and what we do consciously. As Freud put it, it is the little I, or the little man, that sits on top of the elephant, or sits on top of the unconscious. The next part is our shadow. It is the sum total of all our memories and our experiences that we've ever had from birth till now. It is our utility closet. This is where our culture lives. This is what the ego draws upon and digs up and digs out and pushes through the persona and directs it into the outside world. The next part is the animus or anima. Now it is self-described as for men, the female soul image that lives inside of us. It is the dot that is inside the universe of your psyche, just like the black dot that lives inside of the yang symbol in yin and yang. But I want you to notice its position. Where does it sit? Where is it next to? What is the gate? What is it the gateway to? It is the gatekeeper to what? Your inner self. So your anima makes its nest inside your inner self. And last but not least is the center of attraction, which is the self itself, the personal self itself. It is the sum total of all those unconscious processes that go on inside of your head. Your feelings, your thoughts, your sensations, all are contained here. All those autonomous actions that your nervous system actually runs for the body is contained inside here. It is the automatic pilot. And just like a computer's CPU, it can't directly be accessed. It has to go through the interfaces to be programmed. This is where the information and the seeds or the ideas that you plant, this is where they grow. This is where they develop into thoughts, feelings, and actions that reverse and come outside to the real world. And for men, its relationship to the anima is very profound, because you have to have a mature, developed anima to protect and nurture the self. Only a mature mother can properly raise the offspring that you implant in it. This is why it's so important to shape your anima and feed it good material, good emotions, good ideas, good experiences, so that it can nurture those things inside the self and produce good offspring or good thoughts, feelings, and actions. This is why you cannot give over control of the anima to somebody else. This is why men commit suicide, because they've given over the control of the anima to a woman or to some outside force, and the wrong thoughts, feelings, and actions have been planted inside the self. And without control, they have no way to reprogram it. So what does it do? The self tears itself apart, because the locus of control, what it had to nurture it, is removed. So as MGTOW, what we have to do is to get control of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And the only way to do it is to nurture and develop that animus that's inside of us. Now, this has gone on a little longer than expected. And like I said, the individual process is complex. I have one more part in mind if folks out there want me to go through it, which is to tie the intermarriage and individuation with the hero's journey, and a few other tidbits that I have collected over the years. Now, like I said, with your permission, I can go further. If not, we can do the female side and wrap this particular series up, and we can get back to other things. But like always, comment, make another video, give me a shout out, let me know. And with this, I'll close, and I'll see you guys next time.